America has long lived as a first world country, abundant with resources, opportunities, and seemingly endless wealth. Unfortunately, it has yet to experience the worst financial drawback of the 21st century. On the morning of December 27, 2023, Robert Kiyosaki delivered a stern warning about the state of the United States. His message is far from optimistic. He asserts that the nation is facing severe financial challenges, describing it as broke and bankrupt. Kiyosaki goes even further, characterizing the US dollar as trash. His notable concern lies in the unsustainable practice of continuously printing money to address complex issues. According to him, this approach can only persist for so long. But this is not his only warning. First, picture a can of tuna, a simple grocery item. Now imagine it priced at an astonishing $25. This isn't about expensive groceries, it's a warning sign, a red flag waving in the face of economic instability. It's inflation, silently eroding the value of our money and prompting a call for strategic financial planning. Now let's break it down even more. Think about your daily cup of coffee. If last year you paid $2 for it and now it's $4, that's a small-scale example of inflation. Prices are going up, and your money isn't going as far as it used to. Now, let's zoom out a bit. Imagine you're planning to buy a new phone or maybe a TV. Last year, you saved $500 for it, and you thought you were all set. But now, because of inflation, the price tag says $600. So, your hard-earned savings don't stretch as much as they should. And here's a real-world example that hits close to home. In Venezuela, they faced something called hyperinflation. It's like regular inflation, but on steroids. Prices skyrocketed so much that a loaf of bread could cost a truckload of money. People had to carry bags full of cash just to buy basic things. It was tough. Now, is America heading there? Not exactly, but it's like we're on a warning path. When we hear experts talking about the economy being broke or the dollar becoming trash, they're saying we need to be careful. Our money could lose value faster than we think. So it's not just about pricier tuna or coffee. It's about our everyday lives and bigger things like savings and future plans. Inflation is like a slow leak in our financial boat. We might not sink right away, but we need to patch it up before things get too rough. That's why paying attention and being smart with our money is super important. Now, Kiyosaki also expresses concerns about the current state of leadership, particularly in the context of potential alliances between major nations like Russia and China against the United States. Imagine you're considering making friends with someone who has a history of not treating others well. In this case, Kiyosaki is pointing to China and its actions against Taiwan, Hong Kong, and other Southeast Asian countries. It's like saying, look, these guys are not playing fair with their neighbors. If we team up with them, we might end up in the middle of their disputes. For example, China's aggressive moves in the South China Sea have raised tensions with neighboring countries. It's like your potential new friend being a bully to everyone around, and you might get caught up in the drama. Similarly, the concerns about Russia's invasion of Ukraine indicate a willingness to use force to achieve political goals, creating a potential risk for any ally. Now, zoom out to the global chessboard. Kiyosaki is essentially warning that these countries, China and Russia, might be playing a different game, one that could lead to a world war. It's like saying, if we team up with them, we could be dragged into a massive conflict that puts everyone at risk. China's territorial claims and Russia's military actions are like chess moves that signal a willingness to disrupt the global order. If the US allies with nations engaging in predatory behavior, it's akin to being on the same team with players who don't follow the rules. It raises the risk of getting entangled in conflicts that have far-reaching consequences. The worst-case scenario painted by Kiyosaki is a global conflict, the next world war. If the US becomes allies with nations exhibiting predatory behavior, it could mean supporting actions that go against democratic values and international norms. This not only puts the US at risk, but also jeopardizes the stability and safety of the entire world. In simple terms, it's like choosing friends wisely. If your potential friends have a track record of causing trouble, aligning with them might lead to problems for everyone involved. Kiyosaki's concern is that forming alliances with nations engaged in predatory behavior could drag the US into a dangerous game with global consequences. Aside from that, Kiyosaki also warns about the national debt crisis, the growth of entitlement programs, and the continuous expansion of the defense budget. These factors contributed to a significant financial burden and potential strain on the nation's long-term fiscal stability. Imagine pouring money into a leaky bucket. That's what Kiyosaki is cautioning against. When funds are funneled into measures that lean towards authoritarian or fascist tendencies, it's like throwing money into a system that doesn't create real solutions for the majority. Instead, it often results in concentrated power and limited benefits for the broader population. On a practical level, excessive spending on initiatives that don't contribute to the well-being of citizens but rather support authoritarian measures can be seen as wasteful. The money spent on such endeavors might not yield tangible benefits for the everyday person, leading to financial resources being drained without addressing the root issues. Now, think of entitlement programs as promises the government makes to its citizens, like healthcare, social security, and unemployment benefits. When these programs grow rapidly, it's akin to making more and more promises without having a clear plan on how to sustain them financially. If promises and commitments increase unchecked, it puts additional pressure on the nation's finances. It's not saying these programs are bad, but the challenge lies in ensuring that they are sustainable over the long term. In terms of the national debt crisis, just like a household with an out-of-control credit card bill, when a nation's debt becomes too massive, it puts a strain on its ability to invest in essential areas like education, infrastructure, and social programs. Imagine the national debt as a giant credit card bill. The national debt is the total amount of money the US government owes to various creditors. When this debt becomes a crisis, it's like having a mountain of debt that keeps getting bigger. The interest on this debt is like the interest on a credit card. It adds up, and paying it off becomes increasingly challenging. Think of what happened to Pakistan. They cannot pay their outside creditors, and now millions of people are living in poverty. Kiyosaki also sheds light on the potential pitfalls of government-backed cryptocurrencies, expressing concerns about intrusive surveillance and control. Imagine if your entire financial life was conducted through a digital wallet controlled by the government. While it might offer certain conveniences, Kiyosaki is cautioning against the trade-offs involved. Just as you wouldn't want someone constantly peering into your wallet, Kiyosaki is wary of the intrusive surveillance that could come with government-controlled cryptocurrencies. Governments with access to these digital transactions might monitor and control financial activities to an extent that raises concerns about privacy and personal freedoms. It's akin to having every financial move tracked and influenced by a central authority. Kiyosaki's solution is reminiscent of keeping your money in a safe at home rather than a digital wallet. He advocates for tangible assets like gold, silver, and oil as a safeguard against economic volatility. These physical commodities, unlike digital currencies, have inherent value and are less susceptible to the potential manipulations of centralized control. It's like having a financial safety net in the form of assets that transcend the digital realm, offering a level of security in times of economic uncertainty. Now, Kiyosaki emphasizes the importance of financial education in schools, highlighting the absence of comprehensive financial education as a vulnerability. The lack of financial literacy could lead to uninformed choices, debt accumulation, or falling prey to predatory financial schemes. Kiyosaki points out that the absence of financial literacy can lead to uninformed choices. It's like trying to drive a car without understanding the traffic rules. You're more likely to end up in a financial accident, such as accumulating debt or falling victim to predatory financial schemes. Understanding how money works, budgeting, and investing are essential skills that empower individuals to make informed decisions. It's not just about numbers, it's about cultivating a mindset that fosters financial independence and resilience. In a world where financial landscapes can be turbulent, having a solid foundation in financial education is like having a compass that guides you through economic challenges, helping you make choices that align with your financial goals and values. Lastly, Kiyosaki's call for preserving individual freedom is rooted in his experiences as a U.S. Marine, where he witnessed firsthand the sacrifices made to protect the fundamental values that underpin a democratic society. It's like sounding a rallying cry to safeguard the very essence of what makes a society free and democratic. Kiyosaki sees individual freedom not just as a right but as a responsibility. It's akin to being entrusted with the guardianship of the principles that define a democratic society. Principles such as freedom of speech, choice, and economic liberty. His advocacy echoes the belief that citizens play a pivotal role in upholding these values and ensuring they aren't eroded over time. Kiyosaki is suggesting that individual freedom isn't confined to the political sphere alone, but extends to economic choices. By staying informed about economic challenges, individuals are better equipped to make decisions that align with their values and contribute to the overall well-being of a free society.
The rich don't work for money. The richest people in the world don't work for money.
And the harder you work for money, the poorer you're going to get. That's the tragedy.
Robert Kiyosaki delivers a profound truth. The harder one works for money, the more likely they are to become poorer. An unconventional perspective that challenges societal norms.
Well, for those who have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Chapter 1, title says the rich don't work for money. And most people don't understand that because they've already been genetically programmed from parents and schools to go to school and get a job and work hard for money. Now, the harder you work for money, the poorer you get.
ESB and the I. E stands for employee, S stands for self-employed or small business, B stands for big business, and I stands for an investor. So to be a B or an I, you have to have what's called the BI triangle. And the definition of a big business person versus a small business person is that a small has less than 500 employees and B has 500 more. That's by Forbes' definition. This is the very big difference. Like I said, most school teachers are like my poor dad. And this was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. What you're seeing here is a financial statement. You know, Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a book on accounting, the most boring subject on planet Earth.
It's not the products, but the design of a business that determines financial success, freeing individuals from the perpetual need to work harder for more capital.
He says, why would I invest in a dumb product when you have a bad business? And so that's when he began teaching me the next level of my entrepreneurial education. It's not about the product, it's about how to design a business that doesn't need me to keep raising the capital. In other words, how do you design a business that keeps raising money automatically? Other thing too, as to be an investor, I don't care if it's a stock, bond, real estate, or a business. As an investor, I'm always looking at this BI triangle. I want to know how well structured is it before I put my money into the deal.
Kiyosaki shatters illusions, revealing that the world's wealthiest individuals don't toil for money, but understand the art of designing businesses that generate wealth effortlessly.
How you put a solid business structure together. Because this is it. There's trillions, well, not trillions, but billions of dollars out there looking for a home. But they don't invest in products. And that was my Rich Dad's lesson. Sophisticated investors invest in a well-designed business.
The reason for that is money was designed to steal our wealth. You know, I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, because it makes me richer. But like the yin and yang of life, everything has opposite sides. So everything that Rich Dad taught me was opposite of what my rich dad, my poor dad. My poor dad was a school teacher. He was good people, but they don't know anything about money. So on one side, my poor dad's always saying, work hard, go to school, get a job, save money, get out of debt. On the opposite side, the yang side, don't do that, So when I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it was about the opposite. That's all it was. And the rich don't work for money. The richest people in the world don't work for money. But the average person, that's not part of their consciousness.
In a critical critique of the education system, Kiyosaki asserts that schools fail to impart essential lessons about money, leaving many ill-equipped for financial success.
And the harder you work for money, the poorer you're going to get. That's the tragedy. So this is how what Fuller talked about, the prison is inside our head, Buckminster Fuller. It starts with misinformation and misorientation. Misinformation, misorientation. And he says, how dare our schools punish kids for making mistakes? How else do you learn if you don't make a mistake and learn from your mistake? He says, God designed us. I'm not really religious, I'm not preaching here, okay? God designed us to learn by making mistakes. For instance,
A baby learns to walk by falling down. Baby learns, to ride a bicycle by falling off the bicycle. Tiger Woods, the greatest golfer ever in history of the world, because he made more mistakes than you and I did. But our schools punish you for making mistakes. That's misorientation, misinformation.
So the reason I say and I do and I speak and I teach is kind of just as the yin and the yang. You got to see the other side too. Because so many people, I don't know about here, but the economy is pretty bad in America, and they're rushing back to school. Gotta be stupid. School teaches you nothing about money. There's fewer and fewer jobs, and taxes are higher. Why would you do that? If you save money, you're taxed. You work harder, you're taxed. And you put your money in a retirement plan, you're taxed. That's not that intelligent, but that's what they teach you in school. So it's opposite. That's why I come up on stage and I talk about the opposite, just to open your mind a bit.
Unveiling a powerful mantra, Kiyosaki contends that meaningful work serves as a beacon, guiding individuals through challenging times, transcending mere monetary pursuits.
If you can understand that, you're looking to those of you at home right now who are sitting going, but I'm going to lose my job, my house, my pension, and all this. It's because you're trapped with old thoughts. And as most people know, is that, when I came up with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, 20-something years ago, mainstream media crucified me. They said, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you don't know what you're talking about. I said, the rich don't work for money. Savers are losers. Your house is not an asset. And I was crucified, just crucified. And the good news is, as several of your guests have said, the most important thing you can have now is not job security, but meaningful work. So you and I don't need the money, but our work is meaningful. And it's our meaningful work that gets us through the hard times. So the good news is my company is sold out. We cannot keep up with product. The bad news is the supply chain shut down, but that's a good problem. We have tons of cash. I have gold, I have silver. I do have challenges in the real estate market, but that's going to make me stronger. That's my only attitude I can have. Otherwise, I just cry and say, well, the government should take care of me. I need a bailout. I need a stimulus.
Empowering the youth, Kiyosaki champions entrepreneurship, recognizing that the path to financial prosperity often lies in forging one's own business endeavors.
And you see, that's why I don't want a job or anything like that. These guys want a job, they have salary, interest. Their big problem is they pay the most taxes. E's and S's pay the most taxes. The B's and I's focus here. We don't pay taxes legally. And that makes a lot of people angry, especially the millennials. They want to tax the rich.
Yeah.
Well, you can't tax the rich because they don't have an income. You see, if you have a job and you have income, you're taxed. If you're a small business person, a small entrepreneur with a pizza shop or something, you pay the highest taxes. But because they're rich, my rich dad taught me to focus here. My poor dad taught me to focus here. And that's what they're not teaching in school. Because to understand this, they would have to teach you this here. And most school teachers are here and here. They know nothing about this and this. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, and when you tie it into school teachers, I think of, okay, if I want to lose weight, I go to a personal trainer who has the body I want. So why do we go to these teachers when they aren't accomplishing what we want to accomplish?
Right. Most school, most of the young people your age today, a lot of them want to become entrepreneurs. The problem with this, you have to understand tax. You see, this is all over the world, very little difference. These guys pay 40% of their money in taxes. So they make $1,000, they're going to spend $400 in taxes. These guys that make $1,000, they're going to pay 60% in tax. So our schools are teaching entrepreneurship, but they're not teaching them tax. Okay? And because they're focusing on income. Over here, it's 20% in tax. So they make $1,000, only $200 goes to tax, and these guys, 0%.
Kiyosaki emphasizes the importance of collaboration, asserting that effective leadership stems from being a team player, a key principle often overlooked.
So those are some of the differences here. So my rich dad trained me to build businesses here. So the most important thing is a mission, next part is a team, and next is leadership. So when you look at these things here, one of the reasons that I went to military school is at military school for 4 years, most important thing is mission. Are you a team player? Some people are, some people aren't. And if you're not a team player, you can't be a leader. So we're constantly trained, for 10 years of my life, mission, team, leadership. I had to follow orders and then give orders as the case may be. So this is traditional military school, and this here is traditional business schools. So when I meet people, they have a business, they got a hot new product, and people think product is it. Product sucks. The world's full of product. You ever go to Hong Kong, there's product coming out of that place all over the place. Then there's legal. Unfortunately, you have to have attorneys, but you got to protect. Like even with real estate, you might have to have the meets and bounds and the property lines. With me, intellectual property, I want to make sure my property is defined. As I said, the problem is a property dispute, who owns that land. Then you have systems, there's like a business is a system of systems. A car is a system of systems. Body is a system of systems. There's the cardiovascular system, there's the lung system, there's a brain system, there's a digestive system, and all this. So as an entrepreneur, I'm always putting systems together. Systems are traditionally the engineers, web systems, accounting systems, marketing systems, and all this. So as a business owner, I don't want to do any of this, but I want to have somebody in charge of my systems here. I do less, earn more money. And this is communications. Okay, that's sales, marketing. There's external communications, internal communications.
Offering insights from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Kiyosaki delves into the intricacies of business design, illustrating how strategic planning can transform financial outcomes.
For example, with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, every month, people like in Japan and China and Asia and Europe, every month they send me money. The second thing is every time I write a book, every month money comes in. When I design my board game, every month money comes in. And what else we have? When we have seminars, more money comes in. So every month, the business of Rich Dad gets richer and richer because we're constantly setting up more assets. So what makes a person rich is the same thing that makes a business rich. So when I designed the Rich Dad company, I designed it to be a rich company. Once I designed this, it was very easy to raise capital. Capital poured in because sophisticated investors, people on the B and I side of the quadrant, saw that I knew how to build a rich, stable company. So today, the Rich Dad company has zero debt and just tons of cash flow coming in, regardless if I work or not. So I hope that makes sense to you, is every month or every year, the Rich Dad company is working to add more assets to the business. So in this economic downturn, money still comes in. When I designed my Velcro company, I designed a wallet and it was sold. Once it was sold, there was no more income coming in. It was a poorly designed business. And that's why my Rich Dad didn't want to invest in my wallet company. But the Rich Dad company, because the Rich Dad company is building assets all the time, it gets to be richer and richer and richer.
Through a cautionary example, Kiyosaki elucidates the perils of poor business design, highlighting how it can spell doom for even the most well-intentioned entrepreneurs.
I had a hard time transitioning from the military coming into the civilian worlds because a lot of civilians, when I came out of the military, they just don't really like being called, hey, get this done. They really don't appreciate that. And you get sued for that today, so I had to learn to change my communications internally. And then the reason I went to Xerox when I got out of the military was learn how to sell communications. And then the reason most people cannot sell, they haven't been trained to do it, but also the fear of rejection. And the last is cash flow. If a person mismanages their cash flow, I don't care how much money you have. I mean, we all know people have a lot of money, but they're broke at the end of the month. So this is called the bottom line, okay, in business. And again, I'll say it, is in my opinion, it is the number one reason businesses fail. is because the entrepreneur is lousy at communications. They can't sell. As I wrote in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I'm not a best writing author, I'm a best selling author. And there's a very big difference. So a lot of times I meet accountants and attorneys. These are the accountants here, these are the attorneys here. They're very smart people, but they're boring. They can't sell. Then they get angry that some punk like me comes along and makes the big bucks. But if you look at Steve Jobs, that guy can sell, internally, externally. Gates, he can sell. Trump can sell. You understand? So what we're going to be talking today about is external communications. Internal communications, different subject again. Okay? That's more in the team building aspects.
Kiyosaki concludes with a sobering truth. The foremost reason businesses falter is the entrepreneur's deficiency in communication and salesmanship, an often underestimated aspect of success.
So the reason I say only lazy people use their own money is because it takes much more intelligence to raise capital. And so I've never been able, ever since my rich dad, since a little boy, my rich dad forbade me from ever saying, I can't afford it. He says, figure out how you can afford it. How can you do something? Figure out how you can do something. So over my lifetime, most of the projects I've started, I've never had any money. I like not having money because it forces me to think. I get creative. I have to educate myself. I have to talk to rich guys. Hey, how'd you do this? How'd you do that? How'd you do that? And what has happened to me, I just turned 72, I've never needed money. Because if I need money, I figure out how to raise it.
Even though the intentions were noble, it became catastrophic. That's catastrophic when you go back and have to go to that number to see when's the last time we were there.
Patrick Bet David left a stern warning to Americans. A catastrophic financial crisis is about to come their way. Now, the question remains, would it be possible to save oneself?
Earlier question I asked of Charlie, I said, what would happen to America today if Elon doesn't buy Twitter, if Spotify doesn't drop, if Spotify drops Rogan, let's say, and a Rumble isn't there, what would happen?
What does this mean for us middle-class people? Recessions can mean job insecurity, tighter finances, and a general sense of unease. But by planning your budget, saving, and staying informed, you can weather the storm.
Entrepreneurs are going to fix 95% of the world's problems. Because in climates like this, you don't think YouTube in their board meetings, they're talking about Rumble right now? What do you think they're talking about? You don't think Facebook and YouTube and all those guys are sitting there pissed off at Elon for allowing freedom of speech? You don't think you don't think YouTube and all the Silicon Valley people are not pissed off at Sweden, Daniel, for not dropping Rogan? How dare you not drop Rogan? How dare you not drop Rogan? Capitalists expose bad arguments, and that's what's happening right now.
Capitalism's focus on growth can lead to bubbles where businesses produce too much or lend too freely. When these bubbles burst, recessions hit with job losses and financial strain. Entrepreneurs can help by creating new businesses, jobs, and efficiencies to get the economy moving again.
Couple things here. Silicon Valley Bank, what really happened there? If you look at this chart, you'll see the blue, the light blue, not the dark blue on the bottom. The blue, light blue is showing assets.
SVB heavily invested in tech startups, and when the recession hit, these startups struggled and some likely failed. This led to depositors losing confidence in SVB, triggering a bank run that ultimately caused its collapse.
And just 5 years ago, Silicon Valley Bank was a $50 billion company in assets. And it was $50 billion in 17, in 18, in 19, in 20 it went up, and then all of a sudden it went from being a $50 billion bank to 2022 being a $200 billion bank, and then deposits followed as well.
The savings and loan crisis, 1980s, 1990s. This involved a different industry, but the core issue was similar: risky lending. The Great Depression, 1929. This wasn't a single bank crisis, but a systemic failure. The panic of 1907 J.P. Morgan, A prominent banker stepped in to provide emergency loans and restore confidence, preventing a full-blown depression.
But the number you want to look at there is that orange color that all of a sudden goes up. What is the orange, graph that we're looking at? What is the orange color that we're looking at? So a few things happen here. Stimulus, influx of tech startups, okay? Silicon Valley Bank buys a $100 billion 3-year bond at an average of 1.7% interest rate. So here's how this works. They buy a $100 billion bond from the government. It's safe. It's going to give them 1.7%. They're thinking they're doing great because everything is a lot lower than that. Remember, interest rates were super low. So like, oh, this is great. We'll be selling it back to customers that are coming to us. It's going to be fine. All of a sudden, it goes to 2.7, 2.5, 3%, 4%, 5%. Because we can't do this. We can't sustain this here. What do we do here? So next thing you know, the chart right here is loan assets and deposits in 2022. But look what happens here with their interest rates of the bonds that they bought. You see the orange? That's the bonds that they bought at $100 billion in 2022. March 2022, a little bit before March 2022. That's 3 years. Next thing you know, Fed rapidly and unexpectedly raises rates to 5% in 1 year. We're going to look at history on how many times this has ever happened in our economy. I'll show you the history of it. 2, cash inflows slow down and withdrawals increase as tech startups are crushed by higher rates. Suddenly, people are running to Silicon Valley Bank. Word spreads about Silicon Valley Bank vulnerable position. Deposits withdrawals escalate. They're forced to sell $21 billion of bonds at a $1.8 billion loss to meet withdrawals. Once they sell the loss, this becomes realized, it's official, and then the FDIC is forced to intervene. Then next thing you know is when we hear about Silicon Valley Bank's about to go out of business, one of the 27 regional banks that we have in America. And then that fear starts going into people saying, could it happen to me? Could it happen to my bank? Could it happen to a community bank? And next thing you know, people lose their minds on Twitter.
Silicon Valley Bank, heavily invested in risky tech startups, faced a depositor panic as the economy dipped. This triggered a record-breaking $42 billion withdrawal in a single day, forcing the bank to shut down. They did not just lose their tech startup investments, they also lost their depositors. This is the biggest loss recorded in a decade.
The government needs to come and bail them out. This is not good. If you keep listening, what if the next bank? What if this? What if that? And everybody's now calling each other. Next thing you know, Chase, JP Morgan Chase is coming, and those clients from Silicon Valley banks are moving their billions of dollars of money to Chase. BofA got $20 billion. Everybody's trying to get these clients at the same time. But what people are thinking about is these families are sitting there saying, if they only save, protect up to $250,000, babe, maybe we need to move some of our money. So watch what happens. $42 billion in one day. Silicon Valley Bank runs biggest in more than a decade when this happened. $42 billion went out in one day, most in a decade. Pandemic put people out of work. At first, we're like, this is not a big deal. The government's sending us money. We're going to be fine. This whole, $1,000 a month, $1,400 a month, this is great. Andrew Yang was right. We should send money to people. We can't afford to do it. Well, guess what? We printed around $6 trillion in the last 3 years. The Federal Reserve and the government. $6 trillion. That's a lot in 3 years. Here's what happened to us. The last time our national debt, GDP to national debt ratio, when you look at this here, was 100%, was 1945, right after World War II. That's catastrophic when you go back and have to go to that number to see when's the last time we were there. So the government is sitting there. It's like a car driving at an 8,000 RPM. Boom! Engine blows up. You can't do this for too long. So we're looking at this saying, wait a minute, 98.2% during 2020? Yeah, it went close to 130% at some point. And if this thing continues with the debt to GDP ratio, look what it can go to next in 2030, 2040. So the Fed is sitting there concerned. What are we going to do about this? The government's sitting there concerned. President's sitting there concerned. Wall Street's sitting there concerned. Everybody's sitting there concerned saying, how are we going to handle this? What are we going to do about this?
The recent recession caused a slowdown in the American economy, like a car stuck in traffic. To get things moving again, the government decided to print more money. This acts like injecting fuel into the car. It gives the economy more resources to potentially pick up speed.
Well, government regulation intensified, fracking permits cut, and oil pipelines canceled. Cancellation of Keystone pipelines resulted in thousands of construction jobs lost, billions in financial impact. All of this is going on. Then you got the Russia created additional supply issues. Some said oil, the Nord Stream pipeline. Who did it? Was it U.S.? Was it Russia? Was it NATO? Who was involved in this thing here? We don't know, but that created a bunch of ruckus. Bottom line, money supply went up and available goods went down. Okay. What happens when this takes place? People have money, but we don't have available goods. Inflation goes wild. Prices start going up. Too slow, too fast for us to respond. The Fed held 0% interest rates and purchased $120 billion per month of treasuries and mortgage-backed securities, which is called quantitative easing. They buy from banks, right? They're buying instead of taking money out, they're putting money in, right? Quantitative tightening, let's take money out of the market. Quantitative easing, let's put money in the market. This is what we're doing print some more money. Put the money in there. Put the money in the economy. Okay, look how much. Man, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poor. But damn, this is awesome. Look at all these policies. How great are they, man? And then why are the richer getting richer? Because bad policies have consequences. And no matter how much money you print and put into the economy, guess what the rich know how to do? Save, invest, and grow their money. Guess what the poor know how to do? Spend and waste their money. And when they spend and waste their money, who does it go to? Companies owned by the rich. So as much as it was a noble thing to do, the disparity between the rich and the poor got wider and wider and wider. Even though the intentions were noble, it became catastrophic.
What Bet David forgot to mention is that recessions hit the poor harder. Layoffs often target low-wage jobs, leaving them with less income during a time when inflation makes everything more expensive. This tightens their budgets and shrinks their savings, while the wealthy may have a safety net or investments to fall back on.
This is crazy. We raised 4.88% in the shortest amount of time ever in the history of America. There's a chart on Statista. You got to see this. It's a great visual. And it shows historically when we've had to increase rates, it's over a 3-year span, or it's over a 6-year span, or a 3.5-year span. No. This is over a 12-month, 15-month span. 4.88%. Boom, like this. Hoping inflation goes down. Okay, inflation moves a little bit. Sales of homes to the lowest in 20 years. Mortgage applications, lowest in 27 years. People who were doing loans, I don't know if you have friends who were doing loans or mortgages or real estate. These are guys that were making $500,000 3 years ago per month. They're not making nothing right now. Guys who were making $100,000 a month are having a hard time making $8,000 a month right now in loans. There is no loan application because even new homes are not being sold to do the loans of new homes. So home sales are down because typically when refi comes down, people will sell homes. No one's selling homes today. Why are they not selling homes today? Because they're still sitting on some cash and they don't want to give up that 3% loan they got a year and a half ago. And then you look at the data. Okay, let's just say I do sell this house. I got to go buy another house, but I got to get that house at 8%. I'm not willing to do it. Why would I do it? So I'm not going to. There is no motive to sell the house. So now, what's the ticking time? A few things. One, Jerome Powell is trying to increase rates, hoping unemployment increases, because that's what we need. They need the unemployment to increase. It's not moving. It's still 3.7, 3.5, 3.8, 3.9. It's not moving. It's right there. Okay, so either we need unemployment to go up, or we need people to run out of money. If people run out of money and they're stressed out, guess what they do? They're going to sell the house. So today, numbers came out saying it's 55% more cheaper to rent than buy. This is the highest we've had ever. It's 55% cheaper to rent than to buy today. This is not a buying season. This is a renting season, okay? This is what Wall Street Journal, many of these other articles will talk about.
Bet David has alluded that for the economy to go up, unemployment should increase, and people should buy houses and take loans to make the economy run again and boost businesses, showing that the economy is really run by the smallest unit of the people in the pyramid.
Okay, meanwhile, the economy's growing, the economy's going up, Dow Jones, based on 7 companies, Magnificent 7. You know who these Magnificent 7 companies are? NVIDIA, you got these Facebooks, the Amazons, the Apples, these 7 companies that are preventing the company from the market from having a crash. Then while all this stuff is taking place, Powell now is dealing with he's afraid. He wants to raise the rates a quarter, but due to the that took place, he doesn't. And then data shows, which is by far the most interesting data to answer your question here, is how much after these 5 situations where we raise the rates multiple times in a span, this being the shortest in the most condensed time frame, how long does it typically save? Is there a formula of when recession comes, if at all? Here's what they realize. Recession usually comes, on average, 11 months after the last month they raise the rates. So what does this mean? If Powell's no longer going to raise the rates, and the last time they raised the rates was September, let's just say, that means recession is going to come when? Not October. So you got October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August. August of next year, 3 months before election. That's if it follows the trends of the last 5 times when they raised interest rates. So everything is right now about mapping out different possibilities. So for example, if we're right now in a conference room and we got board to write on, you and I would write down and would say, okay, World War III takes place. What do you think are the chances of this taking place? Ray Dalio says 50%.
Yes,
okay?
He does.
Jamie Dimon says this is the most dangerous times we've had in America in decades.
With debt interest rates increasing way too high in such a rapid pace, people would just choose to forego the said needs that require loans to purchase. Now, if we are going to look back, recession happened because the loan market is frozen. Who caused the freezing? The banks themselves that keeps on increasing the rates.
Okay, cool. So if World War III happens, what happens to the economy? Who's going to be the parties involved? Are we going to be involved purely through proxy, or is there going to be attack here? Then you write down the possibilities. Okay, if this happens, what are you going to do? If this happens, what are you going to do? Then next, what happens if unemployment all of a sudden goes to 7%, 6%? What happens if inflation goes down? What happens if Powell starts lowering rates back down to 5%, 4%? Holy, that's going to be crazy. What happens? So you got to write all of these different scenarios down. But here's a couple things that we have to be thinking about. And you said, which was fascinating. One, so credit card debt, highest it's ever been. You know what's the craziest thing about credit card debt being the highest it's ever been? Tom, the average interest rate on credit card is the highest it's ever been.
Jesus.
Forget about the debt. So people are worried about the debt. So imagine the interest rates in the last 5 years has gone like this to 23%, or the average is 23% on credit card. You know what 23% means. That means the debt doubles about 2.5 years.
That's like loan shark.
That's loan shark. 3 years, your debt is doubling, right? But that's what we got right now on credit cards. Okay, so our debt is record breaking. The forgiveness for your school loan is gone. So now you have to start paying for it. That's $300-400 a month that people are expecting, I think, October, November starting. Then let's set that part aside. Go to the corporations you were talking about that are borrowing money. This year, their interest payment on corporation that borrowed money is going to end up being around $530 billion. Just interest.
Oh my God.
Next year, it's going to 730. Next year, it's going to 1.1 trillion. In the next 5 years, it's going between 1.3 to 1.5 trillion dollars just on the corporate debt that we're talking about. By the way, next part. Car payment, A credit, no one's affected. Good credit. They're making the credit payments on time. Mortgages, we're not saying anything crazy with people with bad credit not making payments. We're still good. Car payments and subprime, they're seeing a spike in defaults where people are not making car payments. The first sign you're seeing on what's taking place. No problem. Let's go to the next one. That's the scariest one. U.S. has $33 trillion of debt, worst it's ever been, the highest it's ever been. No problem. What does that really mean? Nobody can really figure it out. Here's what it means. Of the money that we have, about 8 trillion of it, the rates are gonna recalibrate and we're gonna have to have new rates that we're going. Every single time the rates go up 1 point, just 1 point for the US government, our interest payments, Tom, increases by $320 billion.
Jesus.
So imagine we raise rates by 3 points, just interest it's $1 trillion more per year. If it's 6%, $2 trillion more per year.